had studied alien species for 40 years. He had traveled to distant worlds, observed strange cultures, and written hundreds of reports for the High Council. His people considered him one of the finest observers in their long history. He had seen predators with teeth like knives. He had documented species that could kill with a single thought. He had walked among giants and monsters without ever feeling his 4 hearts beat faster. They did not feel fear. They had evolved past such primitive emotions 3,000 years ago. Fear was a weakness, a flaw in lesser species. They had eliminated it through careful genetic engineering and centuries of peaceful civilization. They lived in perfect order. They had no wars, no conflicts, no violence. They were, by every measure, a superior species. When the High Council assigned to observe humanity, he expected nothing remarkable. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. There was a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. Initial scans showed a species of average intelligence, average strength, and very short. Reviewed the data during his journey to human space. Humans lived for less than 100 years. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no venom. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. They could not see in the dark. They could not hear beyond a narrow range. They could not survive extreme temperatures without artificial help. By every objective measure, they were one of the weakest species in the known galaxy. Yet something in the data puzzled. Despite their weakness, humans had spread quickly across dozens of star systems. They had built a military fleet. They had survived first contact with several hostile species. The reports contained words that did not fully understand. Words like stubborn and reckless and unpredictable. He arrived at the human vessel called the on a cold morning by their calendar. The ship was small compared to vessels, roughly 300 meters long with visible weapons mounted on its hull. Noted the design with mild interest. They had no warships. They had never needed them. Captain Jake met him at the docking bay. The human was tall for his species, with gray hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes. He wore a simple uniform and carried himself with quiet authority. When he saw, he smiled and extended his hand. Had studied human customs. He knew this gesture was called a handshake. He reached out with one of his 4 arms and gripped the captain's hand. The human's skin was warm, almost uncomfortably so. His grip was firm but not threatening. "Welcome aboard," the captain said. "We're honored to have an observer with us." "Thank you, Captain," replied. His translator converted his words smoothly. "I hope to learn much about your species during my time here." Nodded and gestured for to follow. They walked through narrow corridors filled with busy crew members. Humans rushed past carrying equipment, talking quickly, laughing at jokes did not understand. The ship hummed with energy and noise. It was very different from the silent, orderly vessels of the fleet. Over the following days met the rest of the senior crew. Lieutenant, who preferred to be called Sam, was the weapons specialist. She was young, with dark hair pulled back and a quick smile. She showed the weapon systems with obvious pride, explaining how each cannon and missile launcher worked. Her enthusiasm was strange to him. They did not take pride in weapons. They did not need them. Sergeant Danny Reeves led the Marine squad. He was older than Sam, with scars on his face and hands that told stories of past battles. He spoke little, but when he did, the other Marines listened carefully. He treated with polite respect, offering him a seat during meals and asking simple questions about culture. Doctor ran the medical bay. She was kind and patient, explaining human biology to when he asked questions. She showed him how fragile humans really were. Their bones could break. Their organs could fail. A single wound in the wrong place could kill them in minutes. Yet she spoke about these weaknesses without shame or concern. Watched them all carefully. He took notes and recorded observations. The humans worked hard during their shifts, but during rest periods, they relaxed in ways that confused him. They played games with cards and dice. They watched old recordings from there. They told stories about their families, their homes, their dreams for the future. Sam showed him pictures of her younger brother and sister. They lived on Earth, in a place called California. She sent them messages every week and smiled whenever she talked about them. Danny spoke less about his past, but learned that he had a daughter somewhere who was studying to become a doctor, had left behind parents who worried about her constantly. These humans had families. They had connections. They had lives waiting for them back on there, yet they chose to serve on a military vessel in dangerous space, far from everyone they loved. Did not understand why. He wrote in his personal log each night. He described the humans as emotional and illogical. They made decisions based on feelings rather than pure reason. They formed bonds with each other quickly and strongly. They laughed too loud and talked too much and seemed unaware of the dangers around them. One evening, sat alone in the observation lounge, watching the stars drift past. Captain entered quietly and stood beside him. "What do you think of us so far?" the captain asked. Considered the question carefully. "You are a puzzling species, Captain. You have no natural defenses. Your bodies are fragile. You are short. Yet you venture into the most dangerous regions of space without hesitation." Smiled slightly. "Does that seem foolish to you?" "It seems illogical." The captain looked out at the stars. His expression was calm, but something moved behind his eyes that could not identify. "Maybe it is," said, "but logic isn't everything. Sometimes you have to do things because they matter, not because they make sense." Did not respond. He did not understand what the captain meant. They made all decisions based on logic and reason. Emotion had no place in proper thinking. He recorded one final note that night. "The humans appear unaware of how weak they truly are. I do not understand how they have survived this long. Perhaps they have simply been lucky. I will continue my observations." He did not know that luck had nothing to do with it. He would learn that lesson soon enough. 3 weeks passed aboard the, settled into a routine. He woke early, observed the morning shift, took notes during the day, and spent evenings in the observation lounge. The humans grew comfortable around him. They stopped treating him like a strange guest and started treating him like part of the crew. Sam taught him a card game called poker. He was terrible at it. She laughed at his attempts to bluff, explaining that his 4 eyes made it obvious when he was lying. Danny invited him to watch the Marines train in the cargo bay. They practiced combat moves, hand-to-hand fighting and weapons drills. Found it fascinating in a disturbing way. His people had no such training. They had forgotten how to fight centuries ago. Checked on him regularly to make sure the ship's environment was not harming his biology. She adjusted the temperature in his quarters and provided special nutrients for his meals. She asked him questions about medicine and listened carefully to his answers. She was genuinely curious about his people, not just professionally polite. Began to feel something strange. He almost enjoyed being among the humans. They were loud and messy and emotional, but they were also warm. They cared about each other in ways that they did not. His people were orderly and calm, but they were also cold. They did not form bonds the way humans did. He was thinking about this when the alarm sounded. The noise was sharp and sudden. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Crew members stopped what they were doing and ran to their stations, stood frozen for a moment, unsure what to do. Sam appeared beside him. Her smile was gone. Her face was serious and focused. "Come with me," she said. "You'll want to see this." She led him to the bridge. The room was filled with tension. Officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Captain stood at the center, staring at the main display screen. It showed a section of space near a dying red star. "Report," said. A young officer spoke quickly. "Distress signal from a science vessel, Captain. They were conducting research near the star when they were attacked. Their engines are disabled. Life support is failing." Felt something cold move through his body. A vessel, his people, they were in danger. Who attacked them? Asked. The officer hesitated. Raiders, sir, 4 ships. They're holding position around the vessel. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop. Noticed the humans exchange glances. He saw something pass between them, something he did not understand. Even Sam's expression changed. Her eyes grew hard. Knew about the... Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were slavers, raiders, monsters. They attacked weaker species and took prisoners to sell in illegal markets. They were brutal and cruel and feared nothing. The had always avoided them by staying in safe space, protected by treaties and alliances. But now a ship was trapped, and they were circling like predators around wounded prey. How long until they finish their work? Asked. Maybe 2 hours, sir. They're taking their time, probably waiting for the crew to weaken before boarding. Nodded slowly. He looked at the display for a long moment, then turned to. Observer, that's your people out there. I need to know if you want us to intervene. Stared at him. You would fight for a vessel. If you ask us to. But there are 4 enemy ships. Your vessel is alone. The odds are against you. His expression did not change. I'm aware of the odds. Looked around the bridge. Every human was watching him. They were waiting for his answer. They were willing to risk their lives, their ship, everything for a species they barely knew. All he had to do was ask. He did not understand these creatures at all. Yes, said, please help them. Nodded once. Then he turned to his crew and everything changed. All hands battle stations. This is not a drill. We have a rescue mission. Lieutenant, power up all weapons. Sergeant Reeves, prepare your Marines for possible boarding action. Doctor, ready the medical bay for casualties. The bridge exploded into motion. Officers shouted orders. Systems hummed to life. The ship itself seemed to wake up, transforming from a vessel of exploration into something else entirely. Watched the humans work. Their faces had changed. The smiles were gone. The laughter was silent. Something old and dangerous looked out from behind their eyes. They moved with purpose, with focus, with an intensity that made 4 hearts beat faster. Sam passed him on her way to the weapons station. She paused for just a moment. Stay close to the captain, she said. Things are about to get loud. Then she was gone, sliding into her seat and bringing the weapon systems online. Her fingers danced across the controls with practiced ease. Danny's voice came through the ship's speakers. Marines ready, Captain, let them come. Acknowledged the report and turned back to the main display. There was accelerating now, pushing toward the vessel at maximum speed. The ships appeared on the screen as red dots, surrounding the green dot that represented the science vessel. Time to intercept? Asked. 20 minutes, sir. They'll see us coming. Yes, sir, they'll have time to prepare. Smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. It was something else, something had never seen before. Good, the captain said. Let them prepare. Let them see us coming. I want them to know exactly who they're dealing with. Stood at the edge of the bridge trying to understand what he was seeing. The humans were outnumbered and logic said they should retreat, call for reinforcements, find a safer solution. But they were not retreating. They were charging directly at the enemy. He felt something strange in his chest, a tightness, a coldness. His hands trembled slightly. This was wrong. His body was reacting in ways it should not. They had eliminated these responses. They had evolved past such primitive reactions. But as the race toward battle, realized something that shook him to his core. He was afraid. For the first time in his long life he felt fear. Not fear of death, but fear of what he was about to witness. Fear of what these strange, fragile, impossible humans were about to do. And somehow, standing among them, he was also excited. He did not understand that feeling at all. The dropped out of hyperspace like a stone falling into still water. One moment the ship was racing through the strange colors of faster-than-light travel. The next moment it was there, hanging in normal space between the dying red star and the crippled vessel. 4 ships turned to face the new arrival. They were ugly vessels, covered in spikes and weapons, painted with symbols that meant death in a dozen languages. Each one was larger than the. Together, they had enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Stood on the bridge watching the main display. His hearts were beating too fast. His hands would not stop shaking. He had never felt like this before. Every instinct told him to run, to hide, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. Captain stood at the center of the bridge, calm and steady. He studied the enemy positions with cold eyes. "They're breaking formation," an officer reported. 2 ships moving to intercept. The other 2 are staying with the vessel. "They think we're scouts," Sam said from the weapons station. "They're sending a warning party to chase us away." Nodded. "Then let's show them we're not here to be chased." He turned to face. For a moment their eyes met. The captain's expression was hard but not cruel. There was something else there, something that looked almost like hunger. "Observer, you wanted to see what humans are capable of. Watch carefully." Then he turned back to the display and spoke 3 words that changed everything. "Open fire, Lieutenant." Sam's hands moved across her console. The shuddered as its main cannons released their payload. Twin beams of white light shot across the darkness of space, striking the lead ship directly in its center. The enemy vessel's shields flashed, flickered, and died. A second later, the ship itself exploded in a ball of orange fire. The bridge crew did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They simply continued working. "1 down," Sam reported. "Second ship is accelerating. They're angry now." "Good," said. "Angry enemies make mistakes." The second ship opened fire. The rocked as enemy weapons struck its shields. Alarms sounded briefly before officers silenced them. Damage reports scrolled across screens, but no one seemed worried. Sam returned fire. Her shots were precise, calculated, deadly. She targeted the enemy's weapons first, disabling their main cannons. Then she hit their engines, leaving them drifting and helpless. "Disabled," she said. "They're not going anywhere." Nodded, moved to the next target. The remaining 2 ships had abandoned the vessel. They were coming now, racing toward with all weapons charging. They had seen what happened to their companions. They were no longer underestimating the human vessel. "Incoming fire," an officer warned. "Multiple missiles." The twisted and rolled, dodging through a storm of explosions. Grabbed a nearby railing to keep from falling. The ship moved like a living creature, ducking and weaving through the enemy attack. He had never experienced anything like it. Vessels were stable and smooth. This was chaos. But the humans moved through the chaos like they were born for it. Sam destroyed the incoming missiles with short bursts from the point defense guns. Issued orders in a steady voice, never raising his tone, never showing fear. The crew responded instantly, adjusting shields, rerouting power, keeping the ship alive through skill and determination. A weapon struck the side. The ship screamed as metal tore, heard crew members shouting in a distant corridor. The lights flickered. "Hull breach, Deck 7, someone reported. "Seal it," said. "Keep fighting." Sam fired again. Another ship lost its shields. Her follow-up shots tore through its hull, and the vessel broke apart in a spray of debris. Only 1 enemy remained. It was the largest of the 4, the command ship. It turned and tried to run, pushing its engines toward escape. "They're fleeing," an officer said. "Let them go," ordered. "We're here to save lives, not chase cowards." The command ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of its companions. For a moment, the bridge was silent, then took a deep breath. "Damage report. Hull breach on Deck 7 is sealed, shields at 40%, weapons fully operational, no casualties on the bridge." "What about Reeves?" Before anyone could answer, the ship shuddered again. But this was different. Someone was trying to board. Danny Reeves' voice came through the speakers. "Captain, we have visitors. Boarding party from the disabled ship. They punched through before we could stop them." Felt his blood run cold. They were inside the ship. He had seen images of what they did to prisoners. They would kill everyone. They would destroy everything. But did not look worried. He looked almost pleased. "How many?" the captain asked. "About 20, big ones." "Can you handle them?" Danny's voice was calm, almost bored. "Yes, sir." Turn 2. Observer, would you like to see how humans fight up close? I can show you on the internal monitors. Did not want to see, but he nodded anyway. He had come here to observe, and he would not look away now. The main display changed to show a corridor on Deck 7. They had already killed the emergency seal. They were pushing through the damaged section, their massive bodies filling the narrow space. They stood over 2 meters tall, covered in thick scales that could stop most weapons. Their claws scraped against the metal floor. Their eyes burned with bloodlust. Then the lights went out. For 3 seconds, there was only darkness. Then the humans attacked. Watched as Danny Reeves led his Marines into the corridor. They moved like shadows, using the darkness as a weapon. They could not see them, but the humans could see everything through their tactical visors. Rifle fire lit up the corridor in brief flashes. Each flash revealed a falling, a Marine advancing, a battle being won one shot at a time. They tried to fight back. They swung their claws and roared in fury, but they were blind and confused, and the humans were neither. Danny reached the lead just as his rifle jammed. Without hesitation, he dropped the weapon and drew a knife. That was twice his size. It should have crushed him easily. It did not. Danny moved under the creature's claws and drove his knife into the weak point beneath its arm. They screamed. Danny pulled the blade free and struck again, then again, until the monster fell. 3 minutes later it was over. 20 lay dead in the corridor. The Marine stood among the bodies, breathing hard but alive. Danny's voice came through the speakers, calm as always. "Deck 7 secure, Captain. No casualties. 1 minor injury. Corporal Davis cut his hand on a tooth." Allowed himself a small smile. "Good work, Sergeant. Get your team to medical." Stared at the screen. His entire body was shaking. He could not speak. He could not think. He had just watched a dozen humans defeat 20 warriors in close combat. He had watched them fight in the darkness, outnumbered and win through pure skill and ferocity. Captain turned to look at him. "Still think we're unaware of how weak we are, observer." Had no answer. The hours after the battle were quiet but busy. They had taken damage. The hull breach on Deck 7 needed proper repairs. Systems across the ship required attention. Crew members worked through the night, fixing what was broken and preparing for the journey home. Wandered through the corridors, watching everything. He could not sleep. His mind was too full of what he had witnessed. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the falling in the darkness. He saw Danny Reeves fighting with nothing but a knife. He saw Sam's calm face as she destroyed enemy ships with cold precision. He found himself outside the medical bay. Through the transparent door he could see working. She moved from bed to bed, checking on wounded crew members. Her face was tired but focused. She had been working for hours without rest. Entered quietly, glanced up at him and offered a small smile. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "No, my mind will not settle." Nodded. "That's normal after a fight, even for those of us who weren't in the middle of it." Looked around the medical bay. 7 crew members lay in beds being treated for various injuries. Burns, cuts, broken bones. 1 Marine had a bandage wrapped around his entire torso. Another was sleeping under heavy sedation. "Will they survive?" asked. "All of them. Some will need weeks of recovery, but they'll live." Paused to adjust a monitor. "We got lucky today. No deaths on our side." Thought about what he had seen. Lucky did not seem like the right word. The humans had fought with incredible skill and coordination. They had won through training and determination, not luck. "May I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." "Why do you do this? Why do any of you do this?" He gestured at the wounded crew members. "You risk your bodies, your lives, your futures. You face creatures like the who could kill you easily. Why not stay safe on your, why come out here to the darkness?" Was quiet for a long moment. She finished checking on a sleeping patient before turning to face fully. "Do you know what my grandmother told me before I left Earth?" she asked. Shook his head. "She told me that life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about choosing which pains are worth suffering for." Looked at the wounded Marines with something like pride in her eyes. These people chose to serve. They chose to protect others. When they get hurt, it's not because they were foolish. It's because they decided that some things matter more than their own comfort. But what things? What matters so much that you would sacrifice everything? Smiled gently. "Other people, strangers mostly, people we've never met, people we'll never know." She paused. "Today we saved your science team, 32 people who would have been taken by thee and sold into slavery. They're safe now because of what we did." Thought about this. They protected themselves through treaties and alliances. They avoided danger. They negotiated with enemies. They had never fought to save strangers. They had never considered it necessary. "Your people are very strange," he said quietly. "I know," replied, "but I wouldn't have it any other way." Left the medical bay and continued walking. His feet carried him through the damaged sections of the ship, past crews making repairs, past Marines cleaning their weapons, past officers reviewing battle data. Everyone was tired. Everyone was hurt in some way, but no one complained. No one questioned whether the fight had been worth it. He found Captain in the observation lounge, standing alone before the great window. The rescued vessel was visible in the distance, being escorted by the toward safe space. Its lights were back on. Its crew was alive. Did not turn when entered, but he spoke anyway. "Can't sleep either." "No, Captain." "Join me then." Stood beside the human and looked out at the stars. They were silent for a long time. "I owe you an apology," said finally. Raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For underestimating your species. In my early reports, I described humans as fragile and unaware. I suggested that you had survived this long through luck, not skill. I was wrong." The captain nodded slowly. "You're not the first to make that mistake, won't be the last either." "How do you do it?" asked. "How do you face enemies like the knowing that you might die? The eliminated fear from our species because we believed it was a weakness, but you still have it. I saw it in your crew's eyes before the battle. They were afraid, yet they fought anyway." Was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "You're right," he said. "We were afraid. Every single person on this ship was scared. I was scared." He turned to look at directly. "But that's the thing about fear. It doesn't make you weak. Running from fear makes you weak. Standing and fighting despite your fear, that's what makes you strong." "I do not understand." Smiled slightly. "Your people eliminated fear because they thought it was a flaw, but fear isn't the problem. Fear is a signal. It tells you that something important is happening, something worth caring about." He looked back at the stars. "When you remove fear, you remove the ability to be brave, because bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to act despite being afraid." Considered these words carefully. They had no word for bravery. They had no concept of courage. Without fear, such ideas had no meaning. "We lost something," said slowly. "My people. When we removed fear, we lost the capacity for what you describe." "Maybe, but you're not dead yet, observer. You felt fear today, didn't you?" Nodded. "For the first time in my life, it was unpleasant." Laughed softly. "It always is, but you didn't run. You stayed on the bridge. You watched the battle. You didn't hide or beg for mercy." He put a hand on shoulder. "That means the capacity is still there, somewhere inside you. Your people might have buried it, but they didn't destroy it completely. Thought about the High Council. He thought about his people's perfect order, their absolute safety, their cold and logical society. He thought about what they had given up to achieve it. We believed we were superior, he said. We believed that eliminating weakness made us strong. But watching your crew today, I begin to wonder if we made ourselves weaker instead. Nodded. That's a question worth asking. Not sure I have the answer for you, but I know this much. He gestured toward the rescued vessel. Those people over there are alive because a bunch of scared humans decided that their lives mattered. Fear and all, weakness and all, we got the job done. He turned and walked toward the door, then paused. Get some rest, observer. We've got a long journey ahead of us, and you've got a lot to think about. Stood alone in the observation lounge for a long time after left. He watched the stars drift past and felt the strange new emotions churning inside him. Fear, courage, sacrifice, connection. They had none of these things, and for the first time in his long life wondered if his people had made a terrible mistake. 3 months later returned to space. His transport vessel glided through the peaceful systems of his, past the orbital stations and the ancient monuments that floated in perfect order around the central planet. Everything was exactly as he had left it. Clean, quiet, safe. It felt wrong. After months aboard, the silence of space seemed unnatural. There was no laughter in the corridors, no card games in the crew quarters, no stories shared over meals. His people moved through their lives with calm efficiency, never raising their voices, never showing emotion, never connecting with each other the way humans did. Had changed. He could feel it in his bones. Something had woken inside him during those months with the humans, and it refused to go back to sleep. The High Council summoned him to the Great Chamber 3 days after his return. The building was ancient, built during the earliest days of civilization. Its walls were covered with symbols representing order, logic, and peace. 12 elders sat in a curved row, their pale blue faces calm and expressionless. Stood before them alone. Observer, the eldest council member said. Her name was, and she had led the council for over a century. We have read your preliminary reports with great interest. Your observations of the human species have raised several concerns. I am prepared to answer any questions, replied. Good, let us begin with the incident near the expanse. You witnessed humans engage in combat with raiders. Please describe what you observed. Took a deep breath. I observed a single human vessel defeat 4 enemy ships through superior tactics and firepower. I observed human soldiers repel a boarding party in close combat, killing 20 warriors with no losses of their own. I observed a species that should have been destroyed by a stronger enemy win through skill, coordination, and determination. The council members exchanged glances, leaned forward slightly. These humans fought for a vessel, for our people. Why would they risk their lives for strangers? I asked them the same question, said. They told me that protecting others is part of who they are. They believe that some things matter more than their own safety. This is illogical behavior. Perhaps, but it was effective behavior. 32 scientists are alive today because humans chose to fight for them. Considered this. Your reports also mention that you experienced an unusual emotional response during these events. You describe feeling fear for the first time in your life. Is this accurate? Had known this question would come. He had prepared himself for it. But standing before the council, facing the judgment of his entire species, he still felt nervous. Yes, he said, it is accurate. I experienced fear while standing with the humans. Not fear of them, but fear of the danger we faced together. It was an unfamiliar sensation. Fear is a primitive response that our species eliminated long ago, said. It serves no purpose in a rational society. I believed that as well, but I have come to question whether our elimination of fear was entirely wise. Silence fell over the chamber. The council members stared at with expressions of surprise and concern. No one had questioned the decisions of their ancestors in centuries. "Explain yourself," said quietly. Gathered his courage. This was the moment he had been preparing for. Everything depended on what he said next. When we eliminated fear, we also eliminated the capacity for courage. Courage requires fear to exist. Without something to overcome, bravery has no meaning. He looked at each elder in turn. "The humans taught me this. They are afraid every day of their lives. They fear death, loss, failure, loneliness. But they do not let these fears control them. Instead, they use fear as a signal that something important is happening. They face their fears and act anyway." "You suggest that fear makes them stronger?" asked. "I suggest that the ability to feel fear and still choose to act makes them incredibly powerful. They are larger, stronger, and more numerous than humans, but they ran from battle. The humans did not, because they have no answer for an enemy that refuses to submit to fear." Stepped forward. His hearts were pounding, but he did not stop. "I have studied thousands of species across the galaxy. I have observed predators and prey, conquerors and survivors. I have never seen anything like humanity. They are fragile, short-lived, and emotional. They should be one of the weakest species in known space. Instead, they are becoming one of the most formidable." "What is your recommendation, observer?" asked. "You were sent to assess whether humanity should be contained or cultivated. What is your judgment?" Took a deep breath. "My recommendation is that we form an alliance with humanity, a military alliance, the first our species has signed in 3,000 years." The council chamber erupted in quiet murmurs. Several elders looked shocked, others looked troubled, raised a hand, and silence returned. "You understand what you are suggesting," she said. "We have avoided military entanglement since the dawn of our civilization. We have maintained peace through neutrality and non-interference." "And what happens when a threat emerges that cannot be negotiated with?" asked. "What happens when an enemy comes that does not respect treaties or fear consequences? They took one of our vessels. They would have enslaved our people. If not for the humans, they would have succeeded." He straightened his back and spoke with conviction he had never felt before. "I have seen the darkness that waits between the stars. I have seen what lurks in the regions beyond our safe borders. And I know, with absolute certainty, that someday a threat will emerge that we cannot avoid. When that day comes, I do not want to face it with species who have never known fear. I want to stand beside those who have known fear their entire existence and chose to fight anyway." Studied him for a long moment. Her ancient eyes searched his face, looking for something. Finally, she nodded slowly. "You have changed, observer. You are not the same person who left on this mission." "No," agreed, "I am not." "And you believe the humans are worth the risk." Thought about Captain's quiet strength. He thought about Sam's laughter and deadly precision. He thought about Danny's courage in the darkness. He thought about tireless compassion. "I believe they are worth everything," he said. The council deliberated for 7 hours, waited outside the chamber, packing and worrying in ways he had never done before. Finally, the doors opened and summoned him back inside. "The council has reached a decision," she announced. "We will accept your recommendation. They will open formal negotiations for an alliance with humanity. You will serve as our primary liaison to the human fleet." Felt something surge through him. Relief, joy, excitement, more emotions that his people had supposedly eliminated. "Thank you," he said. "You will not regret this." Almost smiled. "Perhaps, or perhaps you have led us into a new age of danger and uncertainty. Only time will tell." She paused. "But I will admit, observer, that your words have made me curious. I have not felt curiosity in a very long time." 6 months later, the human alliance was formally signed. It was the first military pact they had agreed to in 3,000 years. Representatives from both species gathered on a space station at the border of their territories, exchanging promises and shaking hands. stood among the human delegation, wearing the uniform of a liaison officer. Captain was there, along with Sam, Danny, and they had requested permission to attend the ceremony and had arranged it personally. After the speeches and the signing, found standing alone near a window, looking out at the stars. "How does it feel?" the captain asked. "Changing the course of your civilization?" Considered the question. "Strange, frightening, wonderful," he looked at. "Your people have a word for this. Hope. I think I am beginning to understand what it means." Smiled and extended his hand, gripped it firmly. "Welcome to the family, observer." "I think," said, "that I would prefer to be called simply from now on. Observing is no longer enough for me. I want to participate." Laughed. "Careful what you wish for. Participating with humans tends to get messy." Looked out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, threats were waiting. Enemies were gathering. Challenges were approaching that would test every species in the galaxy. But for the first time in his long life, was not afraid of the future, because he knew that when the darkness came, he would not face it alone. He would stand with the humans, and together they would show the galaxy what courage truly meant.